I got laid off from my corporate job yesterday. And I think that this is the reality for a lot of Americans right now, and it needs to be shared because America.
The job market isn't just competitive, it is quite literally impossible. There is no amount of networking that you can do if jobs are simply not available to apply to.
It's not your resume, it's not your interviews, it's just the fact that we're at record high layoffs for this year. A new report from Washington Post saying that we have the most number of layoffs since the pandemic, and before then was the housing crash and the dot-com bubble. So
we are beyond in trouble, man. Okay, before we get into all the fun stuff and the good conversation, I want to say that if you are not subscribed yet, I would love for you to subscribe. This is something that we do regularly. I love talking about these kind of topics, bringing them here, discussing them, dissecting them, figuring out what we can learn from it and how we can apply it within our own businesses if you have one. Hopefully by the end of this conversation, you're entertaining the thought of doing so. But I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button, click that bell, and I will see you on the next upload after this one's done. Please stick around. Hey besties, welcome back. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Kat. This is Creatives Collective Co., my YouTube channel where we talk all things branding. On here, I like to look at current events, pop culture happenings. I like to give my commentary on it because I like to yap. I look at it from my professional perspective, and then I look at it with a branding lens. What can we take and learn for ourselves? What can we take from what's happening and grow with that? And today, I want to focus on the job market crisis that I am seeing. It's affecting my family, it's affecting friends, and quite frankly, I am watching with horrified fascination with the downward spiral that we're in. And I kind of want to take a look at what's happening, why is it happening, and what my perspective on what possibly we can do to empower ourselves, put the ball back in our court in this economic downturn. Now, forgive me, I'm going to look at my computer to make sure I get the numbers right. But in 2025 alone, 1 million Americans have lost their jobs. Historically, 170 to 290,000 jobs were created each month pre-pandemic. But this year has been recorded in the past month alone, we're only producing 12,000 jobs. 29,000 per month before that in 2025. That is, I don't even have words for the kind of insanity that is, the kind of bleakness that we're facing. Our numbers, what I was seeing, I was trying to do research for this. I was trying to get a feel for what the numbers were. I wanted to report as accurately as I could, but they were all over the place. But across the board, you can see that we are facing loss unlike we've ever seen before. The ratios of people who are looking for jobs and applying for jobs are astronomical. I saw some recruiters report that 700 applicants, 700 people applied for the same job. And with those kind of odds, how is anybody finding a job? How are you able to land a position? We are seeing things that we've never seen in job markets before. People are getting laid off without reason, without cause. Companies are hiring massively only to downsize a few months later. There are people who have gotten promotions. A month after their promotion, they're losing their job. There are so many factors, so many things that are happening. The culture of security in a job has changed drastically. There is no such thing as job security anymore. And so many people are feeling the squeeze of that. People are feeling the necessity to hold on to jobs that may be stressing them, aren't necessarily fulfilling. And actually, honestly, even saying that, I know how insane that is. In this economy, you can't afford to find fulfillment right now. Some people can. I'm not saying that this is for everyone across the board. Some people are really blessed and they've not had to feel the misfortune of having to keep a job that they don't like. But that story is more often, it's more common than not at this point. There are people who are holding on to jobs they don't like for the sake of the security of a check. There are people who are doing everything right. They're checking all the boxes, and yet they're still facing a layoff with little to no reason. And I wanted to delve into why that is. Why are we seeing the issues that we're seeing? And what can we do? What are some things that we can do? And why aren't we seeing more people doing the thing that I'm going to suggest? Tariffs. Now, I'm not going to get into politics here too deeply, but I cannot ignore the effects that these tariffs are having on our job market. And I'm going to delve a little bit into why. When a company is paying for supplies, a company needs supplies to run their business. A lot of these businesses are product based. Their supplies are not being bought here. It's expensive to buy here. It used to be cheaper to buy outward, to buy outside of our country. The tariffs that these foreign countries are having to pay are being kicked to the company. The company's not going to eat those costs. They're going to kick it down to the consumer, and it increases the cost of these products. When we see that price increase, two things are going to happen. One, people are going to be like, what the heck is this? I'm not paying this. So they just don't buy that product. They will look elsewhere. So the company loses money that way. And then those who decide to stay out of brand loyalty, or just because they don't have a mind to go somewhere else for whatever reason, they end up staying with that company. It is not nearly the amount that they once had prior to these price hikes. And so these companies are seeing loss in their wages, loss in their income. And what are they going to do? They're going to look to cut their losses. They're not going to try to, I don't think the first thought of a company is to, well, let's just stop the supply and let's come inward. No, again, it is more expensive to buy supplies within our country, unfortunately, than outward. They're going to just look to cut costs with labor. So they look to the workers, and they are able to hire at will and fire at will. So they're going to cut their workers. So people are losing their jobs in that way. And so tariffs, here's my opinion on it. I feel like if we are going to do tariffs, what should have been done was, instead of trying to send out a stimulus to us, to the people, I feel like the stimulus checks need to be sent to these companies, to companies maybe who have and incentivize the people who are making supplies within this time, within our country, incentivize them to create the product, create the supplies that are needed. And maybe they can turn inward, maybe make it cheaper, maybe give it an incentive to buy inward. I don't know what this was about. I'm not going to pretend to understand fully. All I know is it's affecting us, and it's affecting us in a negative way. And from what I've studied and what I've learned, tariffs almost always come at the cost of the consumer. And so we are having to pay for it as citizens, and people are paying for it in the job market. And two is our recent shoving down the throats of AI. I know AI is potentially a great tool. It helps us to streamline some work. It helps us to not necessarily, it saves us time, essentially, especially when used right. But the way that it's being presented, the way that it's being used within our market to replace certain jobs, it is marking some job positions as obsolete. It's replacing people. And that's the direct line of how it's being lost. And I'm sure there are going to be some people in my comments who will argue and say the AI is not necessarily doing that. From my research, it just seems like it's kind of a toss of the coin. It's kind of both ways. It seems that AI has its positive aspects. Of course, it streamlines the work. That was a stumble. And it creates an easier way for us to go about our tasks. I can recognize it as that. But we do see where, especially in the tech field, AI is replacing people in certain job demographics and fields. And as well, I noticed that a lot of recruiters were complaining about the use of AI because AI is not, it's sending, and I guess one of the jobs that people are using it for is to filter and field applicants. And it is still, even with its tweaks, it is overwhelming the recruiter, overwhelming the interviewer with the amount of applicants. And so it is causing an overwhelm and then a freeze in making decisions. And so I am seeing where AI is causing some issues. It can help streamline work, but I am seeing more often than not people are having to account for that kind of difficulty or that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the tech field was a pretty stable job market prior to. You did not hear of massive layoffs the way that we are since the creation of AI. So I would venture to say that AI is a viable reason for why we're seeing the job market loss. specifically in the tech field, in a way that they've never experienced before. That used to be one of the most stable jobs you can get into, was in tech and engineering. So I'm intrigued by the full effect. We're still very much in the early rollout of AI. We'll have to see really as time goes on what the full effects of it will be. But from the looks of it, I see some negative aspects coming down the pike for us with AI. Like a major reason and a major factor in the job market being what it is this economic downturn. From the housing market to financial unsurety. Unsurety, is that a word? We're gonna pretend that's a word. Being unsure of our finances, people are not spending as much. Therefore, they're not patronizing stores as much. People are losing profits in the stores. People are losing their jobs. And it's just a mean cycle. This is something that we've seen. It's not anything new, but it is happening at a speed and a rate that we've never seen. And it's a very scary thing to behold that we're dealing with right now. And we're not too sure how to navigate this. This kind of adulthood is all we know, but it is increasing at a rapid speed, and we're not really sure what to do. And so when we're dealing with this kind of economy, when we're in a market where literally 50,000 jobs were laid off in October alone, we lost 50,000 jobs, where again, where I said in the beginning that several 100,000 jobs are supposed to be introduced in the job market every month. We're seeing a fraction of that. We're seeing maybe 10% of what we normally would see being introduced in the market. And of that 10%, a lot of those job postings are ghost postings. There's so many things that we can get into with the ethics of the job search and how difficult it is to not only procure a job, but actually expand and grow within a position. That is not happening currently right now. There's caveats in this, but far and wide, the mass story that is being told, being narrated right now in this season of life, is that there's a lot of job loss. There are people who have been out of jobs for 7 months. There are people who are not able to find positions within that 7 months. Some people have applied to thousands of jobs and not gotten one interview, or have gone on 7 rounds of interviews. All of these things are not normal. These are indicators of a massive downturn in our market, in our economy. And so in a time where we are at this record level of job loss, where we are having applicants at a ratio of 700 to 1 for a job position, what are we supposed to do? Where's the reprieve? What are we supposed to do here? This is where I suggest something that I'm going to suggest it, and of course, as someone operating in this, it sounds easy, but it is worth having a conversation. I feel like now is the time for us to look at how can we create something for ourselves, and I'm going to get into why. Now, of course, I know that is easier said. There are steps to it, there are nuances to it, but I very strongly feel like this is the time. Now is the time more than ever to start something for yourself. Starting a business during what we're going to say the quiet part out loud. We are in a recession. We are in a recession, potentially heading toward a depression, and we're heading at it at a record speed. So why would I suggest us starting a business, or starting something for yourself, starting a brand, starting your business now, where I just said that there's an economic uncertainty, where we're not sure necessarily what's going on? Why start now? Well, half of our Fortune 500 companies that are on our roster right now started in a recession. Airbnb started after the housing crisis in 2008. People were looking for ways to be able to form some kind of income. People were traveling but couldn't necessarily afford hotels anymore. And so Airbnb created a way for people to rent out their home, rent out an extra bed or an air mattress, and people were able to have a place to stay. And this also created some stimulus for people in the economy. And so there are so many businesses. You get the most resourceful when your back is up against a wall. And so I feel that, studies that I've seen has shown that starting a business during a recession is an incredible idea. Two, it puts the ball back in your court. I have seen in this when I was working a regular job. I'm an entrepreneur. I work full time for myself. But back when I was working in the corporate world and I worked in retail, I remember both in retail and corporate, I remember how I used to be rewarded for how I was a go-getter. I would get my job application. I would put my application in. I would send in my resume. I would follow up with the hiring manager specifically, got to know them on a first name basis, and made sure I was checking in to see how my application was going along. And that would get me interviews. Every job I ever went for, I got with that methodology of going after it. That is no longer being rewarded. No one is able to do that anymore. If you do something like that, if anything, they throw away your application. They are completely taking the power out of our hands as far as being able to procure a job for yourself. What you used to be able to do to make a name for yourself, they're now saying you can't do. So, like, what can you do except for be a sitting duck and continue to apply and hope that you get through the process when you are competing with people who are just as qualified as you are, who went to school just like you did? And being an entrepreneur, or at least looking at going into freelance, puts the ball back in your court. You're able to hunt, you're able to draw people in with your marketing, you are able to send emails out and send proposals out, cold messaging people. There's just so much more you can do when you decide to market yourself versus try to sell into someone else's company. I feel like you're able to advocate for yourself better when you're working as a brand and you're being a freelance person and you're coming to them with your skill set saying, this is what I can offer, these are my prices if you choose to use my services, whatever. I think that is a huge pro with going into your own business. And pro number three would be, it causes you to be innovative. Yes, we are dealing with a recession and an economic downturn, but there is something called the lipstick theory. And the lipstick theory is when people are going through an economic downturn like this, when we're dealing with this kind of loss, this kind of uncertainty, people tend to want to go toward comfort, and they tend to want to still hold on to little luxuries. They won't necessarily splurge the several $1,000s on, the gadgets and gadgets they used to, but they are going to go for that Chanel lipstick. They're looking for little comforts, little luxuries that will help them to still feel special. We're not going to be down that bad. One thing an American will never do is be down that bad. We will try our best. And I think even outside of our country, when you look in Europe and you look at other countries, you still want those little luxuries for yourself. And so that's your chance to shine. That is your area to shine. And also in other areas like service-based things, I was going through and researching different businesses you can go into. There are needs for things like laundromats, vending machines, services where maybe you're running errands for someone else. There's just so many things that you're able to do and you'd be able to serve other people in, that will put the ball back in your court. And again, that's what my main thing is. It just feels, it is so tempting to feel powerless in this situation. You don't know what to do. You don't know how you're able to get ahead. How are you going to get yourself to stand out against all these applicants? Put the ball back in your court. Apply for yourself, or advocate for yourself in these different arenas. Find ways to serve people in what this economy calls for. I would look for I if I were doing this, I would look for different areas that are holes in the market, and I would serve in those areas. Again, a laundromat. You can never go wrong with a laundromat. People are always going to need to do their laundry. Running an errand service, helping people file or prepare their taxes. There are just things that you're able to do and go into business for yourself, and draw people to you, draw the customer directly to you versus trying to sell yourself to the corporation who's drawing the customers in. So those are my main three pros. Those are the three things I think of. And also, if you're like me, I never liked having people telling me what to do. I never liked having people tell me where to go. I like the challenge of building something for myself and being able to create an environment where I can work with people that I liked. I can work with clients that I liked and make a lasting impact that way. It was a lot more fulfilling. And that's on the, I feel like that's more on the luxury end of the reasoning, because right now we're looking at necessity. And if you're not getting any bites on your applications, I want to focus on that. But I will say that when you find your groove and you're able to work with people that you really are enjoying, you are you are fulfilled. I feel fulfilled. Is this necessarily, was branding always my plan? No, honestly it wasn't. My passion was in the fashion industry, and who knows what can happen down the line. But I am so fulfilled in seeing people be empowered and able to grow something for themselves. And that's far beyond anything I could have ever imagined in a 9 to 5. So those are my pros, those are my reasons. I would be foolish if I did not go over the cons with you. And so I want to give a realistic look at what are some cons, what are some obstacles you may face if you do decide to go through something like this. But then I'm going to still give you a little look. I'm team start something for yourself. I will always be honest with that. So I'm always going to I'll give you the honest truth, but I'm also going to vie for why it is still a great idea to start something for yourself. One issue that's pretty obvious or pretty honest as far as an obstacle would be the startup costs of a business. Now, depending on what you're offering, service-based businesses they can be a little bit less expensive to start up than a business that would require products, require shipping, labels, things like that. That definitely is a whole different venue. But I can speak from experience as someone who has a service-based business. Service-based is a little bit easier to get started up, and I also figured out what I needed financially along the way, versus a product-based business. But my advice to you, if that is a con, if that is an issue for you, is to start small. The amount of clients that I've had when I sit with them and I'm working on their brand and we're going over just the basics, looking at the different services that they have, the different products that they utilize to make their product, I found that 9 times out of 10, in fact, I've not had one yet where I didn't have to adjust their costs, where maybe they were paying, for example, I had a client who our first meeting ended in tears because she was paying $500 for 2 emails that she never used. And so there's so many things that we are told that we feel like we need for startup that you don't need necessarily. So I would do my research. I would figure out what do I need to start up. If you are selling earrings, what do I need to start up an earring, like whatever you're selling business? What are the things that I need? And I would make a quick little outline of those things, and I would get the basics and start at my basics. Another con would be that the payoff is not as immediate as getting a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 6, as I've been hearing. It's not as immediate. You're not getting a steady paycheck. And that's scary. I get that. And I know that is a lot for people to have to grapple with. But listen, again, we are in a place where we're in unprecedented times. And if the control is being taken out in every other way, why not try this way where you are going to get a payoff? If you do what you need to do, you are going to get a payoff. The only way that you don't is if you don't promote, is if you don't try. You will have a paycheck in there. You just have to work toward getting it. So I know it's a little discouraging. It's not as instantaneous, and a lot of people find comfort in that, and it is comfortable, and I get why it's alluring. But again, when there is a lack of stability and you have nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, why not try that? That the economy is affecting everyone. This is not exactly a seller's market right now. So why, Catherine, are you being stupid and telling me that I need to start a business? Number one, watch your mouth. I'm not dumb. Two, I think that, here's the honest truth. I would rather build a service. you have these skill sets, right? You're not worried about the economy going to these companies, asking for them to give you a job, or not asking, applying for them to give you a job. Why not take those skill sets and go directly to the consumer that they're trying to sell to? Why not take those skill sets and be a freelancer? Why not take those skill sets? And again, I think my main thing is getting the ball back in your court. We have lost so much control. There's so much uncertainty. And then on top of that, you're not giving me a chance to figure out how to get my head above water. So why not? Why not try this venue and do your absolute best to find a market or a niche that you can serve? No matter what, there's always going to be someone who can buy. Not everyone is as affected by this economy as we see. Yes, everyone is feeling a pinch here, but more often than not, there are people who are living above the poverty line. There are people that you are able to sell to. There is always someone who's willing to buy. And if you have a service that you can sell, if you have a skill set that you could utilize, that you can sell, why not utilize your skill set and sell it directly to the consumer? I had literally a few minutes ago one of the most incredible conversations with some friends who are in the job market and navigating what they want to do. They're entertaining the thought of um, doing something for themselves. And I asked them the question, and before I even hop on and even start sharing what was said, I want to apologize. I'm so sorry that you or a loved one or whoever is watching, that you're having to be affected by this, and that it is so difficult to get your head above water. I can't imagine how scary that is. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to not know whether you're going to get a job. Where is that stability coming from? And so everything I'm saying here, I'm saying with the heart of wanting to see someone thrive and do well for themselves. And so and have that control and not have to live in fear. There's so much that's happening and so much that we don't have control over. And I want you to have that control. So I'm so sorry that if this wasn't what you ever planned for your life, this is something you're having to entertain. But it is not nearly as hopeless as you think it is. Your back is not, there's never a point where your back is so far against the wall that you can't find your way out. There's always a way out. And there's so many other venues. I know you can keep applying. You can, hire a service that helps you to kind of stand out amongst the applicants. Totally get that. I totally understand and see that vibe. But for me, if I can encourage people to take part in something that is bigger than themselves and take part in something that will grow beyond what they expect and grow with them, I'm going to do that. So back to the conversation I had with my friends. What is the obstacle or obstacles that are in the way keeping you from saying yes to investing in something for yourself? And one of the things that was shared was fear. Like, it is scary to go from a job where there's stability, you have a trajectory, you're able to grow, you are making the big bucks, the big boy, big girl bucks. And now I am having to build something for myself. It's scary. I totally get that. I think it's a frightening thing for someone who is able to have that kind of stability and know for sure, I went to school for this. I got my degree for this. I have worked my butt off to get here. And now you're saying that we're not even sure if I'm going to stay on long enough to see the growth that I was told I'd be able to grow into. And so I get that it is a very scary reality. The second thing that I heard them say in our conversation was that it's also like a pride issue. It's difficult to have this high yielding, high end job, and now you are having to navigate for yourself, trying to market yourself, trying to do something for yourself so publicly online, because to have a business is to have to be on social media. There's just no getting around it. But to now have to possibly face the whether imagined or real scrutiny of your former peers. That could be a scary obstacle that could cause anybody to want to shut down. But I'm going to say to you what I said to them. I said, look, if I'm going to say it the way I said it. I wish I would let someone take food out of my mouth. And this is the only means that I have right now. It isn't shameful. It's not a shameful way of living. Now, I get that it's not as sure, it isn't as steady, it isn't as stable because of just how much you're having to make happen for yourself. But it is far better to create a path for yourself, to create a legacy for yourself. And maybe I won't throw the word legacy in there just yet, but it is far better to create something that is your own, where you're serving something, serving a purpose that you truly believe in, and find that fulfillment, which won't really be a luxury if you're finding and you're doing something for yourself and building and creating something to serve others. That fulfillment you get won't necessarily be a luxury. It'll be a guarantee because you're going to build, when you build something, you're building something you're passionate about. And so I said to them what my mom would say to me, what I feel in general is that I wish that I would let someone else's ideas about a life that they're not funding take food out of my mouth. I don't care. I will do what I need to do and I will go where I need to go. And how many people started out doing something on a whim, not necessarily a whim, but something that they were passionate about, but had no idea how it was going to grow. And now they are beyond anything they ever could have planned for themselves. I can't even count. And so I'm not going to let someone else's thoughts stop me. And thank goodness, like after that conversation, they felt the same. But I totally get that fear. I totally get how that causes you to pause. But don't let someone stand in the way of you trying something that's different, trying something that could bring you to something um, that is sustainable and more fulfilling than anything you've ever attempted to do within someone's 8 to 6. Another factor that I found very interesting was the feeling of not having the same quality or having the same caliber of work that you would be able to present working within the confines of a corporation. And I will say to you, it is far better to form a creation or a connection with people while you are creating and growing and figuring out your venues than for you to try to present yourself on a fully professional front. The age of the prim and proper is dead. It's been dead since COVID. It is something that we are having to now navigate a new frontier in. How much do you share? How much is shareable? Um, we're figuring that out. But one thing I will say for sure is that being connected, having connection with people is far more important to have than for you to try to present yourself in perfection. Done is better than perfect. So there's so many ideology changes that you have to shift when you're coming out of trying to work in a corporate realm to coming to work for yourself. But it is far easier to be able to just get it done, start from there, learn, critique your work, and then grow and figure out where you need to grow into or what you need to grow into. I get wanting to look professional, but again, done is better than perfect. If you sit here and you continue to wait for everything to look the way that you want it to look, you're never going to get anything done. So I totally get it, but with love, get over yourself. Do what you need to do so you can progress forward and create a venue for yourself and create something hopefully with longevity. Then there's like the insecurity. I don't know if you're out there, but there's an insecurity. Is what I have good enough? Is what I'm offering good enough? I don't know necessarily if what I'm offering as a product will even be something that someone wants. I totally get that. I get not being certain in what you're offering and whether that thing is actually going to be something that's good. But again, you will not know unless you actually attempt it, unless you actually start trying to give it a name, start trying to give it a purpose, figuring out how you're going to roll this thing out. Once you get that figured out, that is 90% of your battle. Yeah, no, let me not be dramatic. Not 90%. It is, I would say 25% of your battle is actually accepting and attempting to create this thing. Once you get that back end and everything created, you marketing and connecting with people will come easily because you got your back end. You got your back end created, you got your systems figured out, and you're going from there. I feel like I'm rambling. Bottom line, just try. Figure it out as you go. Don't be afraid to dive in and figure out what you need to do as you go. You're not going to have all the answers, Sway, and that's okay. I'm going to share with you what my mom shared with me. I was in a job that I was absolutely miserable in, and it seemed like it was very obvious that all the signs were pointing to I needed to leave. And it got very extreme. And I was home, and I came home from work that day, and I was complaining to my mom. And she looked at me and she goes, "Okay, so what are you going to do? Are you going to stay here or are you going to quit?" And I was like, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea what I was going to do. And I was scared, and I looked at her, I was like, are you telling me that I should quit? And she goes, "Quit your job. I will take you over there so you can go ahead and quit your job." And I did. I was afraid because I had no idea what I was going to do next. I didn't want to go into, I was a preschool teacher. I did not want to be a preschool teacher again. And I had no idea what I was going to do. But within that time, because of the pressure, because of the fear of not having a job after those 2 weeks that I put my 2 weeks in, the fear of not having a job really drove me to try to do something innovative. I remembered offhand that there was a conversation I had had that led me into the next job that I had. And that next job that I created for myself, it was a nanny. I was a nanny. I became a nanny. I'd never been a nanny before. And I went online, put a profile up on care.com, got a couple of my coworkers to give me some reviews. And by the end of week 1 of my 2 weeks, I had had 3 interviews. I found one family that I was working with. I was working less days than I was working 5 days a week. I was now working 3 days a week. I got paid double what I got paid working as a preschool teacher, working as a nanny with half the days. It gave me more time to work on my side hustle, and it gave me it was a great season. I love those kids to this day. I'm still connected with those kids. And it was just it was a great fruitful, that was a fruitful jump that I made. Why am I sharing this story? Right now, I have no idea how many of us feel like we are up against a wall and we have no idea what we're doing. We don't know where to go. I have no idea how long this kind of fall in the economy is going to. And I'm sure so many of you are feeling like I have no more fight in me. I don't know how much longer I can take having another application turned away from me, having another door slam in my face. Like my mom said to me, I will say to you, make your own door. Make your own door. After I got done managing that family, I was able to work full time for myself. And it has been a blessing. It has been, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's been all roses, rainbows, and butterflies, but it has been absolutely a blessing building something that I would have never had the ability or the means to have done had I not taken the chance on myself and actually taken this business seriously that fell into my lap by accident. So yeah, you may feel like you have your back against the wall, but your back is never so far against the wall that you cannot maneuver your way and figure it out. Starting a business for yourself is scary, but it gives you so much more control and is so much more fulfilling. There's so much more that you're able to do that you probably would never have dreamt of being able to do for yourself. And so I highly encourage you to step out and try it for yourself. Well, if this is something you truly are wanting to entertain in my conversation, lit a fire under your tush and you want to get yourself some resources and tools to move forward, I have a few free resources for you that I would love for you to utilize. One, I've got a PDF that is a checklist of everything from step 1 to step 7 that you need to build your business from the interior to the exterior. And it goes from idea to fully realized business. If that is something you're interested in, I would love for you to just comment startup and I will send you a link to get you started and get you that free PDF. If you want to have a little conversation and you want to have a vision call with me, which is just a quick 20-minute call, you share with me your business, I share with you some ideas and kind of get your or share my insight, get your ideas on where you're wanting to go and help you kind of build a foundation and get a direction on where you're going. I would love for you to utilize that as well, but you'll find the link of it in the show notes. Well, this was a big conversation. I hope that this left you encouraged. I hope it helps you to feel like this was something that is maybe more in your wheelhouse. You do have some of the reality of the more difficult things, but it's all achievable. If you're putting this much effort and putting thousands of applications out there, put some efforts and bet on yourself. I would love to see more people be empowered and working for themselves, doing something fulfilling in what they feel they are called to do. So that is my honor to be able to have this conversation with you. I hope that you're able to also share with me if this is something that this is pause. Also, if this is something that's affecting you and something where maybe you could share your own perspective and aspect, I would love to hear that down below. Sound off in the comments. Share your own ideas, your own thoughts about this job market. Do you think that we're going to come out of it anytime soon? What do you think we would need to do to come out of it? And what are your thoughts on starting something for yourself? What are some things that maybe you feel like are fears that have kept you from being able to start? And I would love to be able to have that conversation with you. We'll carry on in the comments. I will see you next time. And thanks for tuning in. Bye.